followership in our Twitter and Facebook. So we are clearing in our readers starting the lecture. He might be today's language is going to be English, but tomorrow whole thing will be explained in their regional language. So there is no issue at all.
Excellent. No, and I'm also very comfortable in Hindi if someone wants to ask a question.
So someone ask question, we will definitely ask question.
Okay.
Good problem.
So basically what we are doing, we have a lot of questions in flow in our Facebook page. So might be one of the question which is related to our conversation, we'll ask you after the question answer started. Because first 20 minutes you are going to talk about your everything.
Absolutely.
Our
Yes.
today's subject is the Corona and world.
Understood. Yes.
So soon we are going to the live now. Like sir.
हाँ सर, मैं लाइव करतो आता मग.
We are going live? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
So you are in Geneva right now, okay? Yes?
Yes, I'm in Geneva. 3.5 hours difference. So we are ahead 3.5 hours.
आजादी के आंदोलन की कोख से पैदा हुआ, विदेशी ताकतों के खिलाफ बिगुल बजाने के लिए पैदा हुआ और 75 साल के बाद भी वो आज भी अपने उस काम को जारी रखे हुए हैं।
नमस्कार, मी संतोष आंधळे आपल्या सगळ्यांचं स्वागत करतोय. आरोग्य संवादाचा मानकरी म्हणजे खरा पुढारी. गेले 3 दिवस तुम्ही बघताय, विविध क्षेत्रातली आरोग्य क्षेत्रातली तज्ञ मंडळी तुमच्याशी गप्पा मारतायत, तुम्हाला सोप्या साध्या भाषेत उत्तर देतात आहे. दैनिक पुढारी म्हणजे एकमेव दैनिक असेल महाराष्ट्रातलं ज्यांनी केंद्रीय पातळीवरचे संशोधक, राज्य पातळीवरचे अधिकारी, शहरी भागातील डॉक्टर्स आणि आज चौथ्या आणि शेवटच्या टप्प्यात थेट आपण स्वित्झर्लंडमध्ये जिनेव्हा येथील तज्ञांशी जगातील करोना काय चाललंय, जगामध्ये करोनाचं काय चाललंय, काय तिकडे थैमान मांडलंय याच्यावरती बोलणार आहोत. यासाठी आपल्यासाठी विशेष तज्ञ आपल्याकडे आहेत. डॉक्टर अमनद फार मोठं नाव आहे क्षेत्रातलं, त्यांचा बायोडेटा फार मोठा आहे, मी त्यांची ओळख करून देणारच आहे. डॉक्टर अमनद गिल यांच्याबद्दल सांगायचं झालं तर डॉक्टर अमनद गिल इज द डायरेक्टर ग्लोबल हेल्थ सेंटर प्रोजेक्ट ऑन इंटरनॅशनल डिजिटल हेल्थ अँड AI रिसर्च कोलॅबोरेटिव्ह म्हणजेच IDAR. ही also teaches in interdisciplinary master course on technology, security, politics and norms. Amandeep Gill sir is ambassador, has BTech in electronics and electrical communication from Punjab University. भारताचेच आपले डॉक्टर आहेत ते. And an advanced diploma in French history and language from Geneva University. His PhD degree from King's College London is on nuclear learning in multilateral forums. Most of the time, he negotiates with the most nuclear treaties for our country. We are proud for Dr. Amandeep Gill with us. Amandeep Gill was the executive director and co-lead of the secretary of the UN Secretary General High-Level Panel on Digital Cooperation until August 2019. He previously served as India's ambassador and permanent representative to the Conference of Desmond in Geneva. Ambassador Gill joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1992, and has served at the Indian mission in Tehran, Colombo, and Geneva. From 2013 to 2016, he served as head of the Desmond and International Security Affairs Division in the Ministry of External Affairs. In 2017, he helped set up a national task force on AI for India's economic transformation. So welcome, sir, to our great, rapidly growing newspaper in the country who have more than 80 years legacy and very much dominant presence in 3 states, Maharashtra, Goa, and Karnataka. Before we are starting with you, our managing editor and managing director wanted to say a few words about you. Please, Dr. Yogesh Yadav.
Yeah. Namaskar. Good evening. I welcome you all for the last session of our series Arogya Samvad. Through all the sessions, we try to explore the various aspects of health ecosystem pertaining to the pandemic. And to continue the discussion further, I'm glad to welcome Shri Amandeep Gill, who is joining us from Geneva, Switzerland. A warm welcome to you, sir. Mr. Gill is the director of Global Health Center and has served on multiple positions at organizations such as the United Nations, World Economic Forum, among others. He converges expertise from fields such as health, digital, and international relations. He heads a variety of international projects regarding the pandemic, and we are eager to know from him the current situation at the global level. I request Santosh to please start the session at the earliest. Thank you.
Today, I'm welcoming our esteemed guest, Amandeep Gill sir. Today's language might be Hindi or English, but tomorrow our Pudari give the whole news information in your language, regional language in Marathi. So, sir, we don't want to waste your valuable time. Please address the gatherings. Thank you, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. मैं अपना भाषण शुरू करने से पहले हमारी जो राष्ट्रभाषा है हिंदी, उसमें कुछ शब्द बोलना चाहता हूँ. सबसे पहले तो आपको हृदय से बधाई हो इस उत्सव के ऊपर, और मैं आपकी जो उपलब्धियां हैं उनके बारे में पढ़ रहा था तो मेरे को बहुत खुशी हुई जो आपने ना ही इस एरिया में, जर्नलिज्म में 1 करोड़ से ज्यादा आपके पढ़ने वाले हैं, इस अखबार के पढ़ने वाले हैं, बट आपने और भी कई स्थानों में जो सोशल वर्क किया है, जो समाज सेवा की है, सियाचिन में जैसे अस्पताल खोला है, वो सुन के मेरे को बहुत बहुत खुशी है। और मेरे को बहुत खुशी है आज मैं आपके साथ कुछ समय बिता पा रहा हूँ। Today, you've asked me to speak about how the world has responded to the coronavirus epidemic. Whenever a crisis strikes, that is when we think about who are the foundational workers in our society, what are the most important professions in our society. And if I may list them, this is not a theory, but it's just my personal impression. One of those foundational professions is of storytelling, which is the work of journalists. Throughout the ages, storytellers have played a very important role in our society. And in this crisis, we again see how important that role is to distinguish the truth from fiction, to distinguish the scientific evidence-based guidance from what is called the infodemic. I think journalists have played a very important role. Likewise, a foundational profession is that of the healer. So when I say healer, in the past there was no such, हमारे वैद्य होते थे, but there was no such distinction as doctor, nurses, frontline staff, lab technicians. But today we are thankful to all of them, to all the healers who've stood courageously at the front lines of this crisis. So with this crisis, we again remember this foundational profession. Now, how did the world react to the coronavirus pandemic, which, as you know, originated in one part of the world, which is China, in the Wuhan region of China. And from there, it spread through air travel, through other links to all parts of the world. Practically all parts of the world are now affected by it. The world did not understand the pandemic situation, unfortunately, when it started. So for several weeks, most countries thought that it could be contained within one region of China. And obviously the information that was coming out of China or coming through the WHO also led to that impression. But soon it became apparent that this was not just a seasonal flu. This was not just a localized event, that it was going to spread throughout the world. And then we saw the scenes from Italy. I think what happened in Italy really shook up leaders from around the world. One of the subjects I study is international learning. So often leaders not only look at the assessment that is given to them by their own bureaucrats, civil servants, experts, but they also look at the TV screens. They also look at the newspapers. They look at what they hear from other leaders. The fact that you had those dramatic videos and news items coming out of Italy really shook leaders. And therefore, you started to see these lockdowns, which was unfortunately the only way of stopping the spread of the virus. So the transmission dynamics were such that there was no alternative except to close down social mobility at a large scale. This probably saved countries such as India, where the health system is already burdened with a lot of traditional diseases, infectious diseases, from dealing with a surge, a tsunami of cases that might have overwhelmed the hospitals. So we've handled that well, and now there is a long haul ahead. But looking at other parts of the world, how is it that the world handled the situation? I would like to draw your attention to 3 big points. The first one is that unfortunately we've seen with this crisis that the communication between the scientific experts, the technical experts, and the political leadership, the policymakers, was not perfect. And this is not just about leaders in a few countries that did not believe that this was a serious situation, but it's been a concern overall. experts have become so expert in their own field that they are not able to communicate, translate what they know in ways that leaders can understand, and in ways that allow leaders to develop different options for dealing with the crisis. So that's been one big failure. The second failure has been of the resilience of our health system. So the world, especially where I live in the Western world, spends a lot of money on healthcare. The per capita expenditure, the top two countries in the world in terms of per capita expenditure are the United States and Switzerland. And a lot of this expenditure is taken up by intermediaries. जो बीच में दलाल हैं, the brokers in the health system. And real investments in health infrastructure have not been made in a substantive way for decades in terms of basic items like protection equipment, ICU beds, etc. So there is a saying in English, the emperor has no clothes. So this crisis exposed the weaknesses of these modern, well-funded systems in terms of critical basic issues. So it was very embarrassing for some of the developed countries to see that although on paper their health system is listed as number one, number two, Italy as well, it comes in the top 10 when it comes to ranking health systems, they were not in a position to handle this well. And surprisingly, countries like Rwanda, New Zealand, Singapore, who have had Taiwan is not a country, but Taiwan is an entity by itself. It's an international entity. So they were able to handle it much better because they had made those investments. They were ready. The third big lesson, I would say, which is important for us to note, is that pandemic surveillance, disease surveillance, preparedness for responding to the spread of infectious diseases was shown to be lacking. This is a subject that started to come up in international discussions after 2005 in particular, when the international health regulations were passed at the WHO, the World Health Organization here in Geneva. The audience might know that the WHO does not work with legally binding treaties except in two areas. One is tobacco control. So the injunctions against tobacco are legally binding now in the WHO context. And the other is the IHR framework, where countries are obliged to share information if diseases occur that have a potential to become epidemic or potentially pandemic, then you are obliged to share data, obliged to share information. And then this is implemented, but in ways in which we are not able to trust the information that's coming. So this weakness was exposed by this crisis. Governments were reporting data, but there was no trust in that data. Or governments were reporting data that came in late or in an imperfect form. So the world really doesn't have a good pandemic surveillance system. And the fact today is because of climate change, because of overpopulation, particularly crowded living in urban areas, and because of global connectivity, and the fact that we are as humans pushing against other species on Earth, these diseases are going to be occurring regularly. And therefore, if we don't take care of these three big problems, the science policy interface, the investments in the resilience of our health systems overall, and pandemic surveillance, we are going to see these problems come up again. I want to conclude my remarks by talking a little bit about technology. That is the area that...
We're eager to know about the technology, because most of the time we are many behind from longer time in healthcare properly.
Yes, yes. So I would like to talk in particular about what digital technologies can mean. All of us are aware of what Aadhaar has done for India, the universal ID for it. So Aadhaar has allowed us to target subsidies, eliminate $10 billion of corruption in the distribution of subsidies. It has allowed us to build the India stack. So financial payments, whether it's RuPay or Paytm, all these technologies that we use, which are very helpful to the person of limited means. आपको 200 रुपए का अगर loan लेना है, traditionally the bank would never look at you. But today, thanks to digital technologies, you can process 200 rupee loans. And a vegetable seller can make sure that there is cash flow in her business. So similarly, on the health side, there's tremendous potential of digital technologies for improving access to healthcare, for improving health research, and for surveillance of pandemics and responding to them. So in our project, we have invested modestly in some pilots in India, where we are looking at how you can model the burden on the health systems, such as ICU beds or respiratory aids, based on the data that you have available today using artificial intelligence. We've also looked at how the testing for COVID-19 can be scaled up and can be supported by digital backends that allow different players in making the test kits to align their roles and responsibilities, that allow for equity and fairness in distribution, and that make sure that there's no corruption, there's no leakage. So digital technologies can help in many ways. And of course, across the world, we've seen other uses, and India's own Arogya Setu app, the tracing app, has the largest user base in the world. Of course, we can improve on it. There are many ways in which we can still use data in a good way in the context of health. But I'm sure during the question answer session, we'll be able to look at this. Most importantly, what digital technologies do is they allow you to reimagine problem solving. Sometimes, you're caught in very traditional ways of solving problems, like bank loans. You think, just by investing more in banks or bank branches, you'll get more loans out. Maybe not. Digital technologies can provide a horizontal, transversal method of cutting costs, improving inclusiveness. But the most important problem with digital technologies is the lack of governance, the lack of good governance in terms of data protection, data privacy, in terms of inclusiveness, in terms of not having biases in the way we develop them, and most importantly, not divorcing these technologies from the local context. So I'm very proud to share with you that we've been working with a group in the Pune area to develop these hyper-local solutions where digital technologies, data sets, AI models are built from the ground up. So it's almost like आप इसको digital स्वराज्य समझ सकते हैं. So rather than top down, that people in Geneva, WHO, New York deciding how, there is a bottom-up growth of digital opportunities, and our younger entrepreneurs, our younger researchers are able to join in solving global problems around digital health. So let me stop there with a big thank you to both of you for the kind introductions, and I look forward to the question and answer session.
Sir, thank you for your great information, because really almost 1 crore case we cross across the world, 213 countries affected across the globe from corona. Like the started countries like China, Wuhan is now in 22 number across according to Worldometer, and India is now 4th number. So these are the really pandemic situation for country like us. So just we wanted to know, as your expertise in digital health, so can we really start, or we have digital health account? Because really we need in like country in India, we don't know, we don't know what is our health, what we need to be done and how to be done, and there is no proper records. So is there any way we can create our digital health account in India?
Yes, this is one of the most fundamental shortcomings in digital health, the absence of data, the absence of records, and particularly the absence of interoperable records. So आपका जो record है एक जगह पे, it might work very well, but as soon as you go to the next district or the next hospital, it may not work. So this is a big problem with these records. So there is an effort underway in India. It's the India Health Stack initiative. This is one of the efforts. There are many other efforts underway where there is an attempt to standardize these records and also look at potential technology solutions that can work in what is called a schema-less manner, which means that you don't need to have a standard format, but you need to have some standard domains of information in the record, which the digital system can pick up and then use in an interoperable way. So the effort is underway, and some of the fundamental requirements for this effort are being looked at by the government of India. So in Niti Aayog, for example, after the recent digital health strategy was published, so there is an attempt to create registries. So some basic registries of doctors, diseases. So there's an international system of classification of diseases. So for things to be treated digitally, you need standard ways of classifying diseases. Then also about lab results. So if pathology lab results are used across different platforms, then how can they be read in the same way? So this is a massive effort, but I think in India, we have to also be mindful of the fact that health is not a union subject. So in our constitutional scheme, so you have to work with the states, and there will be a distributed approach to these records.
But we can do this such kind of digital health account, you think?
Yes, absolutely.
And
So
it's a need of the hour, you think?
I think it is the need of the hour, but it has to be done in a way that inspires trust in the users. I mean, we have an example in Europe, Estonia. So in Estonia, every person has a personal health record, and you get notified when your doctor has accessed that or a lab has accessed that. So this inspires trust. And for children up to a certain age, parents have responsibility. So if someone wants to access the record of your children, then they have to get clearance from you. It happens very quickly on a device, but I think that those kind of arrangements are very important.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Initially in your address, you mentioned one thing. I just wanted to ask, what need to be done to the scientific expert and political experts, their dialogue, the communication between the scientific experts and political experts? Why not it's happen? What need to be done? Country like us and world must be.
This is a global problem. So not just India, we've seen it in the UK. In fact, in India, there are several mechanisms, these task forces, and scientific advisors where the dialogue takes place. But I think what has happened is there has been over specialization. So cross-domain dialogue between epidemiologists, clinical specialists, digital experts, and others, there has been some gap in there. And then the language sometimes used by scientists and experts can be so incomprehensible, even to other scientists. Yeah. So, there's a need to work on it. And of course, leaders and bureaucrats in particular need to increase their awareness of technologies. Obviously, if fundamental knowledge of data is very important, fundamental knowledge of how medical evidence is generated or healthcare systems is very, very important. Both sides need to work on it.
Yeah, and I think this is a great tool. If you have communicate each other, it will help to the society, I think.
Exactly. In a day and age when information flows instantly, WhatsApp groups can knit together communities from anywhere. So people get information in any case. So it's important that you stay ahead of the curve. Yes. So for the government, for experts, it's very important to be able to have the trust of the public with the right communication, with the right language. And I think this is also an issue for journalism, whether it's TV journalism or print media, to be able to convey complicated things in nice ways. So that's why I said storytelling, that professional storytelling is very important.
We call dissemination of information. Like medical journalism, we have the dissemination. So what kind of information we need to tell the people or readers? We have to disseminate the information and tell the people. The way we are working in the journalism. So recently there is a great development in WHO. Executive Presidency got our Dr. Harshvardhan, Minister of Health and Family Welfare. So how you look at this situation and how we can benefit out of this as a country in India?
Yes, I think India needs to pay more attention to global health diplomacy. Traditionally, we've looked at multilateral work from a broad perspective. We've also looked at some areas like my own specialization, disarmament and international security, especially after the Kargil war. There was a focus for specialization in that area of multilateral work. But I think health also needs more attention. So it's a good opportunity. The Honorable Health Minister is now the chair of the executive board. We also have the chief scientist at the WHO, Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, who used to be secretary at ICMR. So she is heading not only the scientific side, the research side of WHO, but also its new digital health division. So it's a tremendous opportunity. And the third thing I would say is that the world has looked at India in the health space from the perspective only of vaccines and pharma. So Indian companies produce affordable drugs. They are used everywhere in the world, Africa in particular. Vaccines, we have the largest capacity in the world. And I'm very confident with the latest announcement that India will play a big role in the COVID-19 vaccine response. But I think we also need to add some more arrows to our quiver. And one of them is our human resource. So if we can bring our IT human resource and our health human resource together in the digital health arena, then I think we can play even a bigger role on the world stage on this. And third, I would say, in terms of creating these future pandemic surveillance systems, India should be in the leading front of this effort to use technology, use good governance to ensure that the world is better prepared the next time.
Thank you, sir. Basically, sir, the way after the pandemic started, the way vaccine race is going on across the world, every country are claiming we are coming with the vaccine, every country are saying we're coming with the medicines, but till today, nothing has happened. Now, yesterday only we have a big announcement from our country in India. The Bharat Biotech, one of the company, and Zydus Cadila, they are going to finish recently a clinical trial, and they are entering in human trials. So we are expecting this vaccine after August or something like that. This is the communication happened today and yesterday. So why it's a race is going on? Why people are in panic situation when we are going to get the medicine? And what is your view on this?
Yes, so I think this is a great question. So the pandemic has shown up those three weaknesses, but it has also shown that there is a sort of renewed nationalism, selfishness, if you will, across the world. Everyone for himself and the devil take the hindmost. So it's that kind of a situation. One of my colleagues was telling me that in his career of a lifetime on health issues, he's never seen developed countries fighting with developing countries over PPE, protection on the tarmac of airports and so on. So this scramble for treatments, diagnostics, protection equipment, now vaccines. So this is an unfortunate reality today. But you can understand the stakes. The economic stakes are very high. This pandemic has caused hundreds of billions of dollars in direct damage and trillions of dollars in indirect damage. So if you can roll out a vaccine quickly, I mean, I'm hopeful that India would be among those leading countries. Then you can protect not only your population, but also your economy from those negative effects. So people don't want to depend on anyone else because they've seen that dependence creates problems of quality, of pricing, of potential political blackmail. So till we get to a situation where we can trust these supply chains again, where there is better international collaboration, I think there will have to be a focus on security of supply chains, on security, health security as an important part of national security.
Yes. Sir, if you look at it's the situation is come till today, we don't have any drugs which can cure the COVID. No one can did it. But the way repurposing drugs like remdesivir, which is used in SARS and Ebola, like doxycycline, hydrochloroquine, which is using in malaria. Now Fabiflu. Fabiflu was one of the Japanese molecule for a fever. Now this is going to be introduced. Right now, we have tremendous shortage in remdesivir. Most of the people they wanted. The Gilead Sciences company who owned this remdesivir, he had a contract with our 2-3 companies in our India, but yet contract whatever, I don't know the deal, but this is yet not come to the India. In such a situation, what is the role or health system to take a stand to get such kind of drugs?
Yes, so I must start with a caveat. I'm not a doctor or an expert in COVID treatment, but what I've read, what I've heard being discussed, none of the treatments available today has shown clearly that they are effective against COVID-19. You mentioned remdesivir, even the trials that the company itself has supported show a reduction in the time spent in the hospital, not so much in terms of fatality. Doxycycline, some other combinations have been used, but the jury is still out on how these antiretrovirals or some of the existing off-the-shelf treatments, if you will, HCQ, etc., really work or not. I think the research needs to continue, the trials need to continue, and the effort to make sure that these treatments are affordable and accessible to everyone, that also needs to continue. So that requires not only investments from governments and philanthropies into research for lower cost treatments, etc., but also making sure that public-private partnerships are in place to distribute treatments equitably. And I think India is well placed with its human resource, with its existing industrial base in pharma, and also well placed in terms of our experience with infectious diseases over thousands of years. We have a lot of wisdom in the country in this area.
So 15 days ago or more than that, in Oxford University, come with the tom-tom saying the dexamethasone, one of the steroids, showing the great result. And then WHO come with the idea that we have to rapid the production of the dexamethasone. It's one of the steroids, find good result. But for information, the dexamethasone is the basic steroid which we are using in rural countries, rural cities in our Maharashtra and across the country. So basically my question is to you, how the research need to be done. Dexamethasone already available in the country, our rural people already use, but the only thing Oxford does, they conduct the study and come with the conclusions. So can we suggest some research methodology to our people? How can we take such kind of situation as a benefit, come with this good idea and show the world?
That's an excellent question. I think this has been a problem in India for a while, that we may have good ideas, we may have good intentions, but the follow through is not there.
Okay.
So it's like, almost like we believe in the power of mantras that ek baar keh diya to ho gaya. So we don't follow through, and then we don't communicate the thing. Even if an idea may be good, but the way it is presented, how scientific the methodology behind it is, and how it is communicated in the language that's the international benchmark, those are critical skills that our young researchers need to learn, imbibe. And I've seen this in the past 10 years in terms of scientific research. Other countries in Asia have done this. You look at the quality of papers on AI coming out of China 10 years ago, and the quality of papers coming out today. There's a huge jump. So I think this is what our young researchers need to imbibe. They need to work on it. It's a matter of communication at different levels. It's also a matter of confidence and being able to engage with that vocabulary at the international level.
Yes.
So I think that's what I like to say. But you know, why a particular organization is coming out quickly with a responsing, because they don't want to be caught napping.
Okay.
So everyone is trying to kind of make sure that
Okay. So, like India, we have very good studies, sir. Like in the COVID situation, in our Mumbai, one of the BMC hospital, Municipal Corporation Hospital, in Nair Hospital, who conducts 400 deliveries. All the women are positive, but the children delivered are negative. Not a single children transmitted the COVID things. This is a great newspaper, great data. But how this data we have to convert in scientific study to show the world? This is the question. And very soon we are going to do this. So second thing, can you?
We did that in cricket.
Yeah.
I mean, it took a while, but you know, now you can't say that any of our players is less than the international peers or our team is. So
Yeah.
you need to play the game.
Yeah, we need to play. Agree, completely agree. Sir, can you compare with the China situation, US situation, and India? Because China is now the 20, according to Worldometer, is in 22nd, who are starting the disease, and the US is number 1, and India is the 4th. How you compare? How you look at the situation in 3 countries?
You know, it's very difficult to compare. I think one big difference is where you are in the cycle. So China has gone through the wave. So it was there earlier in the cycle. And America is going through the peak. So obviously it's so dramatic and the impact is very much there. And then India is somewhere behind. So I think you have to keep that in mind. The other is, I must say, transparency. You know, it's in the US and in India, it's very hard to kind of fudge information. Eventually, information comes out. It's an open society. With China, yes, there has been sharing of information, but things are filtered through a state-controlled system. So that is the second difference. Third, I would say, is demographics and mobility issues. So both in the US and India, controlling mobility is a problem. You know, I mean, our systems are such that, you know, controlling mobility, and also the nature of the economy is such, a lot of informal work. So it's very hard to have those kind of mobility controls. I mean, we've done our best, but you know, you can't do it beyond a point. And then demographics. So we are a younger society. So obviously, we've seen that this disease hits the elderly population more. So I'm quite hopeful that the fatalities from the virus in India would not be comparable with the fatalities elsewhere. You see that already with the fatality rate. So, and that's how. And in terms of the response itself, I would say our health system has performed credibly. Our doctors, our nurses have done a stellar job. And our industry is also coming together with the right answers, the diagnostics. We had a gap in diagnostics testing capacity, which we have rapidly filled up. We had a gap in PPEs, but admirable job in terms of expanding the production of that. So the crisis came, we rose to the occasion. Of course, the fight is not yet over.
Yes. Now we are in a position to export the PPE now again.
Yes, absolutely.
Sir, you are talking about, in your discussion, you're talking about the health funding, health budget, which we need to spend in our health system. You was in government and you are, now you are, according to my info, you're in sabbatical for your project. What need to be done, or what need to our policymakers should do to get the more fund on the health system? Because I think 1.5 GDP are spending on healthcare system. And you are living right now in Geneva. You are in a great example. So what India need to be done, and where we behind the situation?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We need to spend more on health, education, skilling, and the agriculture sector. You know, those are the long-term foundations of our economy. If our human resource, which is our biggest capital, is not healthy, is not skilled, is not eating nutritious food, I mean, then we have a problem. So I think there needs to be much more investment. But how do you find the money? I mean, the government is in a dilemma. There's so many demands. And it's a tough job for the finance minister, for others to balance all those demands. But I think given the fact that healthcare delivery has largely been in the private sector in India, I think the answer, perhaps the clue to an answer, lies in public-private partnerships. And I dare say the private sector in its own interest must do a little more in terms of investing in research and development. It'll help itself and it'll help the country. And the government and the private sector must align their investments well. So working together, and I've seen this in Israel, where the investments in the technology sector, particularly early stage investment, government comes in and de-risks those investments. And then as the private sector grows stronger, it steps back. So better alignment between those investments could be one way. But certainly you're right, 1.5% or so is not enough. We need more.
Sir, how there is some collaboration between in our experts who are sitting in ICMR, who are sitting in CSIR. We also have expert in IIT Mumbai, IIM Ahmedabad. You think we have to come together to find such kind of solution for COVID, such kind of pandemic?
Absolutely. So one of our research projects that will start in September is about creating these ecosystems of collaboration. So you may have a few clinics, mohalla clinics, or local clinics. Then you have a tertiary hospital. You may have a research institute, an academic institute in that area. Not in the health domain, maybe in the technology domain. There needs to be a system, interoperable system, where you can work together on creating solutions that answer the local problems. I think we've not done enough of it. We tend to build islands. I mean, there has been a long debate on science and development in India. The pioneers like Bhabha, like C.V. Raman, Bose, others, Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar. So we've created these great institutions, but I think at the local level, we need to kind of open them up so that the people in IIM Bangalore can work with the Indian Institute of Science Bangalore, with CCAM Bangalore, to, in a sense, be more than just the sum of their parts, and also engage the private sector, engage youth in particular. I find that our undergrads are very tuned to problem solving. So our undergraduate students need to be part of, we shouldn't look down upon them. So they are the source of ideas, they are the source of energy. We should engage them.
Basically, we need a synergy with all these things. We need a great synergy between all of them. Then only we can come with a solution.
Yes, and more humility. More humility. I think we Indians tend to have very colorful egos. And I mean, I've seen across the world, in Southeast Asia, for example, so the ideas may not be that great, but the collaboration is fantastic. Okay. So the overall impact is much more. I think we need to work more on collaboration and just ceding space to each other, work a little more, keeping in mind the other's perspective, and not hide so much behind egos and logos. The logo becomes important.
Yeah.
Mera wo logo nahi hai, to,
Agree, sir. Sir, in your address, you mentioned some of the things. I just wanted to briefly to understand to our readers, because if we complete it to our Maharashtra, you are talking about some project, hyperlocal solution project going in Pune. So can you briefly tell me about the project? What is the project?
Yes, certainly. So the project has two parts. Essentially, it's two different projects. One is about creating models that present COVID-19 related data in ways that are understandable to policymakers. So the modeling situation has been that there's the Oxford model, Cambridge model, IDM Seattle model, but local models in India, in Africa have not been there. So we need to create local models that work with local data and then are intuitive enough for local policymakers to say, okay, should I lock down here? should I purchase PPP, etc. So that's one. The other is a pilot on bringing human-centeredness into statistics, into data, into digital. So when you reduce everything to numbers, then the human gets lost. So how do the human stories stay alive in data? So how do stories and statistics live together, come together? So that's it's a small pilot, which is I'm very proud that we are doing it first in India and in the Pune area, which will allow us to understand the methodology of future benchmarks for digital health. In the future, we'll have to think of new ways, like, today you check medicines through these clinical trials that you mentioned. But in the future, when digital health solutions are more prevalent, then how do we check that they work or not? How do we ensure that the patient, the physician has agency over those digital tools? So we need new standards, new benchmarks, and we're starting the process of building those with this small project.
Sir, this is a great thing. It's like we do everyday data journalism like this. So Pudhari, if you want any help, we can contribute anything. We are always welcome. If you need anything help from our side, we are always going to do, sir.
Look forward to that. This is
because like such kind of things, our leader also benefited out of that.
Yes, absolutely.
Sir, we are coming to the last session. So basically now, if you want to give one suggestions to Indian government on pandemic of COVID-19. So what is your suggestion to government? What is your suggestion to the scientific community? What is your suggestion to the citizens of India?
So I think I'll start with the scientific community, which is my focus these days. I would say collaborate more across domains. So work with partners from different domains to solve scientific questions. To the citizen, I would say that through your actions, create demand for more investments into health systems.
Okay.
Create demand for more digitalization of health systems.
Okay.
So this is where citizens, day-to-day actions in terms of understanding of data, understanding of digitalization, and ensuring, putting the pressure on elected representatives, etc., for more investment. That's for the government. I think we need to focus more budgetary resources on health. We need to focus more budgetary resources on pandemic surveillance, making sure that these zoonotic diseases, as India urbanizes, as humans push against nature, we are ahead of the curve. We understand where they are coming from, where the risk lies, and how we can respond quickly. And the last thing I would say is work more with partners to invest in research. I think the question you asked about, why isn't that study of 400 pregnant women, why is it not prominent? I think we need to be more at the cutting edge of international collaboration on research, the international publication on research, setting the standards and benchmarks for the future of health, for the future of digital technologies.
Thank you, sir, to your great information. Dr. Aman sir, we thank you. Your great information, enlighten your great information. We just give 1 minute talking to our leaders. आज आपण बघितलं अमनदीप गिल सरांनी आपल्याला व्यवस्थितपणे उत्तर दिली. जिनेव्हामध्ये बसून ते उत्तर देत आहेत, स्वित्झर्लंडमध्ये उत्तर देत आहे. त्यांनी सांगितलं की सायंटिस्ट कम्युनिटीने ह्याच्यावरती आणखीन काम केलं पाहिजे, कोलॅबोरेटिव्ह रिसर्च केले पाहिजे. त्यानुसार शासनाने, केंद्र शासनाने बजेट वाढवलं पाहिजे. जास्तीत जास्त बजेट त्यांनी हेल्थवरती खर्च केला पाहिजे. लोकांनी मागणी केली पाहिजे चांगल्या आरोग्याची, आणि आरोग्य कशा पद्धतीने आपलं सुधारेल, डिजिटल हेल्थ कसं जाईल याची डिमांड केली पाहिजे. आरोग्य व्यवस्थेवरती खर्च वाढवला पाहिजे. ही मागणी सातत्याने आपण करत राहिलो तर आपल्याला ही मागणी आपली लवकर पूर्ण होईल. ते जिनेव्हामधून आपल्याला विविध गोष्टी सांगत होत्या आणि त्यांनी सांगितलंय की एक्सपर्ट लोकांनी एकत्र यायला पाहिजे, रिसर्च लोकांनी एकत्र यायला पाहिजे, डॉक्टरांनी एकत्र यायला पाहिजे आणि याचं सोल्युशन शोधलं पाहिजे. त्यांचं असंही मत आहे की आपली जी तरुण मंडळी आहे ती प्रचंड हुशार असतात टेक्नॉलॉजीमध्ये, त्यांचा वापर करून घेतला पाहिजे. तर सरांनी एकंदरीत आपल्याला विविध गोष्टींना वर्ल्डच्या अनुषंगाने हात घेतलेला आहे. त्यांनी आपल्याला माहिती दिलेली आहे की कशा पद्धतीने आपण ह्या गोष्टी करू शकतो. आपण बघितलं की 4 दिवस आपला हा आरोग्य संवादाचा वेबिनार चालू आहे. राज्य पातळीवरचे, केंद्रीय पातळीवरचे, जागतिक पातळीवर सगळ्या लोकांना आपण इथे बोलवलं. पुढारीला हे केलं शक्य आहे महाराष्ट्रात केवळ, कारण अशा पद्धतीची लोक आणणं आणि केवळ आपल्या वाचकांसाठी दालन ओपन करून देणं हे खरं तर जिकिरीचं काम असतं. गिल सर, थँक्यू, थँक्स अ लॉट.
थँक्यू संतोषजी, थँक्यू टू पुढारी, थँक्यू व्हेरी मच.
तर आरोग्य संवादात मी इथेच थांबतोय. पुन्हा लवकरच येऊ नवीन इनिशिएटिव्ह घेऊन, नवीन उपक्रम घेऊन तुमच्यासाठी, फक्त वाचकांसाठी. तोपर्यंत धन्यवाद. शुभरात्री.
ताज्या बातम्या आणि अपडेट्ससाठी पुढारी ऑनलाईन या यूट्यूब चॅनलला सबस्क्राईब करा आणि त्याचबरोबर नोटिफिकेशन मिळवण्यासाठी बेल आयकॉनवर क्लिक करा.